All right, we're back. Reasonable Measures podcast, number 5. Hey, Chris.
Hey, Tim. Good morning. Good to be here.
Hey, good to see you, man. So today we're going to be talking about a case that is close to home in Seattle, a Boeing case, Zunam Aero versus Boeing. A decision just came down, was it last week, 2 weeks ago? Um, and great case about the importance of trade secrets in collaborations and investments. And so maybe just diving in here to some of the fact patterns, and then I'll hand it over to you, Chris. And so some of these points from the complaint. So first of all, Zunum is this hybrid electric propulsion system. So they're making sort of regional jets using this hybrid electric, platform. Um, and Boeing came in as an investor, and Boeing was a board observer. And so basically, what that means is, they don't have a board vote, but they can attend all the board meetings. They have a very much of an inside view as to what's going on in the company. Um, very much of an insider. And so as things progressed with the technology, um, uh, Boeing was looking to invest more money, and this is from the complaint itself. And so they were doing what any investor would do, is do a bunch of diligence on the technology, kind of understand where things are. So they actually had a team of people assigned to working on the diligence. Well, as it came out in the complaint, that same team of people at Boeing was also working on a competitive project inside of Boeing. Um, and so, okay, that's, Boeing had an explanation for it, which maybe we'll get into. But I think when I finally got into this complaint, it sort of struck me as like, this is a juicy love triangle, right? So you have a third party in here. You have Safran, so a big French aerospace company, and so you had Zunum going to Safran, trying to get them to make some parts for them, right? And then you had Boeing, who was taking this information from Zunum and also going to Safran and asking them to do some stuff. And so, anyway, Boeing backed out of the Series B investment, and so now you have this company that had sort of like framed itself as uh, framed Boeing as its key partner, right? Like that was going to be how they got to market, how they probably ultimately made the airplanes and so on. And so, and now they're sort of left at the altar. They've got no money, and they've sort of unearthed the fact that, boy, Boeing's not been behaving as well as we had hoped or expected. Um, and so, in the complaint, there's a really good sentence, and it says, this was a concerted and systematic strategy to delay and then foreclose the entry of an innovative competitor into the aircraft industry. And so I think that kind of sums it up. And it's a sort of an age old story in these, tech partnerships, David and Goliath kind of stuff. So anyway, Chris, tell us about the outcome of litigation.
Sure, Tim. So, to me, this case is really interesting because it is a collaboration. And like most collaborations, they start out well. Everyone's excited to work together to develop some innovative new products and really come to market. And for Zunum, if they were going to pick a partner, Boeing or Airbus would be the obvious first choices. Getting into the aerospace market is hard. It's not like you come up with a new coffee cup or a new bicycle frame where you can kind of do it on your own. These days, you have to collaborate. And the days of being able to develop an entire product on your own and go to market without collaborating with anyone largely doesn't exist anymore. Maybe 20 or 50 years ago, you could do that, but not anymore. So really what Zunum complained about was two things. So one is theft of trade secrets. Boeing was alleged to have accessed, well, to originally to get proper access, but then use all of that trade secret information inappropriately to develop their own, competing product. And also this tortious interference, which is legalese for basically interfering with my business in Boeing's dealings with Safran, who was going to be a key supplier. So all of this is kind of a classic story, but Zunam alleged those two causes of action and ultimately prevailed with the jury. They found that there was, trade secret misappropriation, there was breach of contract, and that Boeing acted consistently over a long time very badly in installing things out, and basically, Zunam ran out of money and had to shut down operations because they couldn't get the funding that they needed. Developing a new airplane platform is expensive. I mean, that's a tough business to go into. And if you run out of cash, it's a very easy thing to do. So they ultimately got, over, was it around 90 million or so. There was an interesting fact about Zunam not mitigating damages. So the court did say that Zunam could have closed the tap on the trade secret loss earlier. So the damages were knocked down somewhat, not a lot, but a fair amount, due to Zunam not catching the problem earlier and not taking more steps to get things under control when things started to turn south. But for them, they still ended up with 72 million in damages, which could be enhanced based on the willful and malicious nature of what Boeing did. So this is a great initial result for Zunam. Boeing says they're going to appeal. It'll be interesting to see, if they appeal and what the appeal actually looks like. But it's going to be tough sledding for Boeing. So interesting case for sure.
And when you say tough sledding, that's just based on what came out during the trial.
Yeah, it's based on. I mean, it's my prediction, obviously, but based on Boeing's systematic behavior over time, and the fact that what the jury found was pretty compelling of Boeing's bad behavior, both regarding the trade secrets themselves as well as interfering with Zunam's business going forward, and ultimately, Zunam not being able to continue. So that's kind of a tough pattern to appeal. Also, there's a huge disparity in size and resources between Boeing and Zunam, and that story doesn't look really good for Boeing as far as how they behaved as both a partner and as an investor in this small startup. So it's going to be an uphill battle if they do appeal.
Yeah, and so 90 million bucks between the two claims. So 81.2 million plus another 11.6 for the interference claim.
Yep.
So whatever that is, 93 million and change maybe. But yeah, so it got brought down by 20.8 million to ultimately to 72 million was the final number.
And then Zunam also borrowed some money from Boeing as a loan, so they're going to have to repay that as well. But it's small potatoes compared to the total damage.
It was like 800,000 or something.
Yeah, it was some small amount. I mean, it's a lot of money to you and me personally, but to Boeing, it's small potatoes.
Yeah, especially in the context of 72
exactly
million, right? So, well, a couple of things. This whole partnership thing's fascinating, right? And diligence on small companies, startup companies, and we're quite familiar with that as a venture-funded company at Tangibly. And it's interesting. I've had probably countless discussions now with investors. Sometimes with partners, but a little bit more on the investor side. They'll say, and I guess if you haven't done this before and you're not confident just saying no, it's tough, right?
Hmm.
But we've had numerous times where people say, well, tell us how you trained your AI model.
Hmm.
Like, just tell us. It's like, no,
Yeah.
like, I'm not telling you that.
Hmm.
Why would I tell you that? Right. And so it does feel a little bit like, I think one of the threads here for me was, as you're getting into diligence, um, you should feel free to say no sometimes, right? And I think that also sort of sets the bar a little bit higher. So that's one thing. And then the second thing is if now you're in this relationship, with Boeing,
Hmm.
um, and again, didn't get into the weeds of the case, but clearly they did a decent enough job to win the case of documenting things, right?
Hmm.
And that's where I just think, as a small company up against a big company, in a relationship, it's going well, it's everything's working, it's just as we planned. It doesn't take much to go the extra mile to document things and make sure that people understand, hey, this is confidential,
Hmm.
falls within the confines of this agreement, whatever
Hmm.
agreement it is, right? Um, it strikes me as though those two things, I think are good points of learning here.
Yeah, and I think in diligence, yeah, maybe not start with no as a default answer, but at least like understand why someone needs a particular piece of information. Because yeah, if you're on the asking side, of course you ask for everything. You're like, show me everything in your
Yeah.
business. And
Yeah.
and because it's easy to ask for that. You don't have to put much thought behind it. Just show me
Right.
everything. But
Yeah.
yeah, if you're the smaller company holding the trade secrets, yeah, I wouldn't say no to everything because then that's people need access to some information, but you should be a little cautious and understand why the other party really needs some information because some of it they do need, like maybe there's a legitimate reason, but others,
Yeah.
they're just fishing. So either don't provide it or maybe provide a watered down summary version that will satisfy the other party but not reveal the inner critical dark trade secrets that you need for your continued success. The other thing is just understand who's going to have access. Yeah, in some of my past lives, we've done a lot of M&A projects, and you'd actually have a different team. So you'd have a team of people who do the diligence and do the deal, but they're
Yeah.
not going to be involved in product development or in the actual product going forward. So that way, if these people do see trade secrets, it lowers your risk of contamination versus if you have people who are working on very similar projects do the diligence, avoiding that contamination suddenly becomes difficult or maybe even impossible. So really restricting the people who have access can help out a
Yeah.
lot.
Yeah. It seems like Boeing really missed the mark on that one,
Mm-hmm.
didn't they?
Yeah,
Like,
totally.
boy, it's like, man, yeah, they put themselves in a
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
tough
Well,
situation.
and they're a big enough organization that they could segregate people
Sure.
out easily. I mean, they have thousands
Yeah.
and thousands of people, versus a small company where you just don't have that luxury of having different diligence teams. So it could have been done and could have been handled
Yeah.
much better.
So I'm kind of interested to see, like, if, okay, well, first of all, let's just imagine Boeing writes a check, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which they probably won't, but they'll drag it
Mm-hmm.
on for a while, most likely. But
Yeah.
72 million bucks. I don't have a PitchBook account, but I'm guessing if we dug into PitchBook, we'd find
Mm-hmm.
these guys raised what was easily to find. They probably raised 10 million bucks or
Mm-hmm.
something, right? So, wow, 70 million bucks on a 10 million invested. That's a great return. So it'd be interesting to see what happens to the company, if and when they get money. But one of the things that does strike me is, like, these highly disruptive companies. Um, it's almost like you have. I mean, I appreciate your point about, yeah, no company can be fully
Mm-hmm.
vertically integrated from the ground up on day one. That's ridiculous. But it does sort of feel like, hey, if you want to go build this airplane, like, man, just you got to get outside of the conventions. You got to get outside of those power bases. And if it's compelling enough, you can raise a ton of
Mhm.
money, right? And so I don't know if that's practical in this market. I don't know much about it, but it does sort of feel to me like crazy stuff gets funded, and it gets funded to the tune of big bucks. And so maybe it's just like, look, that it's just a strategic mistake, to go think, hey, I'm going to go disrupt this
Mhm.
market. And by the way, I'm going to, the companies that I'm going to go disrupt, I'm going to, co-opt them in on day
Mhm.
one. It's like, I don't know. Maybe that's part of the issue.
It could be. And if they had gone after traditional funding like VCs or angels or government grants, their risk of problems would have gone way down. And the fox came into the hen house early here,
Yeah,
and that may have been part of the issue. But Boeing obviously understands regional jet market very well, so yeah, I understand why they would want a Boeing or an Airbus type company
of
as an early
course.
partner, but
Yeah,
you're also bringing in risk with the opportunity. So you do have to
yeah.
balance that. Yeah, ideally you'd be self funded and do everything without collaborating with anyone and go to market and live happily ever after. But that's tough, and most people can't do that.
Well, it's interesting, just one last thought is, some of the companies, that, we've worked with past and present, and I'm thinking, global, Fortune sort of 500 types, they do like an extremely good job of managing the contamination risk. Like it's like part and parcel to their process, right? Like I want none of that stuff in my system. And yeah, I've really come to appreciate those kind of companies. Like you find it a little annoying in some respects, like they don't want me to tell them anything, right? Or I can't send them anything, but boy, when you look at a case like this, those kind of systems that are set up to protect bigger companies from claims from much smaller companies. It makes a lot of sense.
It really does, and contamination can be deadly, or at least very painful. So having good systems and policies and procedures to avoid it is super important. And this is a great example of when contamination can go wrong.
Yeah.
And contamination can be innocent. Like you can have contamination that was unintentional. The
Yeah.
jury here found that this was very much intentional. So it's even worse.
So, hey, one last question on that, and I don't think we've touched on it yet. But so in patent in patent litigation, there's the triple damages, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you willfully
Yep.
infringe someone's patent, you can get three times the
Mm-hmm.
the damages. Similar kind of thing exists in trade secrets.
Absolutely. And that's
Yeah.
why it's such a big deal that the jury said this was willful and malicious, right in the jury holding. So it's the same thing. And the court could issue a multiple on some or all of those damages and make this even more painful than it already is for Boeing. Absolutely.
All right.
Yeah, it's real money.
All right, man. This is a good one.
It
Thanks,
is.
Chris. We'll see you on the. What are we going to talk about next? What's the next one?
Probably Sigma Farm Laboratories, which is just a really wild, unusual trade secret
Oh
case.
yeah, yeah,
Because
yeah,
most trade secret cases all follow the same kind of general pattern. This one
yeah,
is wild and crazy. So
yeah.
stay
All
tuned.
right, awesome. Look forward to
Okay.
that. See you, man.
Talk soon. Bye now.
Take care. Bye bye. Thanks for listening. A little bit more about us. Tangibly is a platform to help companies identify and protect their trade secrets. It's an end-to-end solution and includes our proprietary AI that was designed to analyze patents and predict underlying trade secrets. Tangibly is used by companies large and small, as well as by law firms. Our investors include Madrona, as well as DLA Piper and Wilson Sonsini. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.